So, as you can probably tell by the gigantic stack of books I have next to me, I, like many thousands of other people, both here in America and Japan and around the world, I am gearing up to take the JLPT in a week and a half. And because I have a massive amount of anxiety right now that I get with any major test, I figured it's a good opportunity to make a YouTube video about what I've been doing to study, because that feels like it's productive in some way for the N3, even though it's really not. Maybe I can save some of you from having to buy quite this many books and go through the amount of wasted time that I've had to deal with some study methods that just didn't work out at all. So as you can see down at the bottom of the video, I've got a little tracker so that you can see what sections are in the video, and if there's a particular part of the test that you're more worried about and you don't care about the others, feel free to skip right on ahead. At the very end, I'm going to be talking about where you can buy these books, both here in the United States and in Japan and online, for anyone who's looking to get these resources. Also, just to say and get out of the way, this video is in no way sponsored by any of the books or the apps or the YouTubers or the services that I'm going to mention. These are all just things that I have personally used and continue to use that I have found useful in one way or another. I sat down to study the grammar for this test. I sat down with the Nihongo Somatome series for grammar. However, if you take a look at how the book is structured, you will probably soon come to understand my specific frustrations with it. So as you can see, it splits up each day. You've got 3 to 4 different grammar points to look at. It'll tell you the specific grammar rules to make it. On very rare occasion, it'll actually tell you what this grammar point means. And then it gives you 2 practice sentences and their translations. And that's it. That's all it does for you. And then at the very end, it's got these practice questions. And admittedly, the practice questions are nice, and these are somewhat similar to what you'd actually see on the JLPT. I had to spend so much time looking on Google and trying to find alternative explanations for some of these grammar points, because some of them you just can't understand from looking at example sentences and going off of that. It was way too vague for me to feel remotely comfortable with. This book does not do a good job of explaining it or spacing them out well enough that you can process one at a time before moving on to the next one. So, this book, in the trash. At the time that I bought the Somatome book for grammar, I also picked up this one, the Try N3 Nihongo no Ryoku Shiken. I am so happy that I bought this book. If you buy one book to study for the JLPT, I strongly suggest that you get the Try book for your JLPT level. So as you can see, this is structured very similarly to the Somatome book, where I've got the grammar and then some practice sentences and then the grammar rule, but I've also got an explanation of the rule in English. While I don't always like the wording that they use for these explanations, it's still very useful to have. They do a much better job than the Matome book in that the explanation exists. So at the end of every chapter, they have this Matome no Mondai, where it reviews all sorts of different question types, and all of these are questions that show up on the JLPT. It's these exact same question types. It also comes with some bonus listening practice here at the end, so that you can practice listening for the grammar points while you're doing the listening section, which has been super helpful. Lastly, there's been one more resource for grammar that has been amazingly useful, almost as useful as the Try N3 book, and that would be a YouTube channel called Nihongo no Mori. I am so sad that I did not know about this channel until like 3 weeks ago. It's basically just a group of adorkable Japanese teachers who go through and explain all of the grammar points for each level of the JLPT. So I recently started watching their N3 playlist, and I don't know what it is about how the guy explains it, or maybe it's just because he uses really good example sentences, and they have sort of a cute discourse back and forth between him and the off-camera people. I don't know what it is, but I find it really helpful to listen to. And if you're wanting to find a grammar resource that doesn't cost any money whatsoever, they are definitely worth checking out. They deserve all your views and all your love and all your likes and subscriptions. So as far as how I'm actually practicing this, I have been making flashcards, like actual physical flashcards for all of them. So I make these, and then I take my cell phone and take a picture of it and put it into an Anki flashcard. I do both the basic and reversed cards so I can practice it from Japanese to English and English to Japanese. So when I'm actually writing the cards, I'll either write both sides in Japanese with the grammar point on the front and then the Japanese explanation on the back, or I'll do something like this where I've got the grammar point on the front, like "Nan no koto dakara," and then on the back I'll have the English that would be the nearest equivalent thing that I would say in English. So in this case, for koto dakara, I would say in English, well, it's so-and-so, so it's probably gonna turn out like this. And to me, that makes a lot more sense, and it's easier to process and easier to remember because it's in the words I would use in English than if I wrote down something like, based on the person's personality, it will likely result in this outcome. So next up is kanji, and this one's probably the most straightforward of any of them, short of like vocabulary. So for this one, I do think that the Nihongo Samatome book was really, really useful. So it's split up, you've got about 8 kanji per day, and then you've got the practice questions over here on the right. So essentially what I do is I just go into Anki and I put in the front side of the card has the kanji, the back side has its own and kunyomis along with the English translation of what that character means. And then I make a basic and a reverse card for it. So after I put that in Anki, I let Anki do its thing, and then I sit here with a whiteboard, and as the cards come up, I have to write out the character on my whiteboard. So a lot of you are probably wondering why I would recommend the whiteboard when the JLPT is obviously a multiple choice exam and you're never going to have to write a single character on it. Well, the obvious reason is I use Japanese outside of a multiple choice test, which I'm assuming most of you do as well, so it sort of makes sense that you should be able to write the kanji just in your daily life. So vocab is again a pretty straightforward section. So I've been using this N3 Tango 2000, or N3 Vocabulary 2000. As you can see, it's also by the same people who do the Somatome books, and it's exactly what you would expect from a vocab book. It's just a bunch of Japanese words and their definitions and then one example sentence each. So for these, I just go into Anki, like all of my other flashcards. I just type in the Japanese word on the front side. The back is how to read it and the English translation. And you'll notice that for these, I'm only doing the basic, so just from Japanese to English. The reason for that being is, just like my grammar book, I've got this cute little handy check sheet. So as you can see, I just put it over one of these pages. It hides the Japanese word. I've got to try to figure it out, and that's my English to Japanese practice. And also, Anki has a lot of pre-made decks or decks made by other users that you're free to download. They probably have a listing for the N3 as well. I'm just one of those super paranoid types, and I wanted to get something similar to an official book to try to make sure that I studied everything. I'm sure you could go the free route and you'd probably end up the same way. So reading and listening, I practice them both similarly, so I'm going to kind of talk about them together. I'll go ahead and start with the reading specifics. So for both of these, I use the Somatome book. I think, honestly, you might be a little bit better prepared if you use the Shinkansen Master Series. I didn't get those because at the time, I just wanted the nice, easy review because again, I was never really scared about whether or not I was going to pass this test. I always knew that my Japanese, especially my reading and listening, were at the level to pass this test without needing to stress myself out and get the Shinkansen Master. So for reading, my honest recommendation would just be to get as many materials as you can and try to go through it. Obviously, you'll want to do some that are JLPT specific because you're going to want to be doing the practice questions with them, because honestly, for me, it's not a question of whether or not I understand the reading, and the same thing goes with listening. I often completely understand the passage or the listening and it's just fine. The questions can sometimes be a little bit tricky, and you can narrow it down to 2 things, but they're going to be very, very similar, and it's kind of hard to tell which detail they're looking for. So being able to go through several practice questions and start to kind of get used to that format and those types of questions has been really, really useful. But otherwise, just do everything you can to find reading passages and try reading them through. Absolutely make sure if you're doing something that gives you time limits like a practice test, make sure you stick to the time limits. Another YouTuber that I really, really love, her name is Kamushi-chan. I'm sure lots of you have heard of her channel. A couple days ago, she actually posted a video giving her reading strategy suggestions about just grabbing as many reading passages and trying to go through as many as you can in 20 minutes. Definitely go check out her video because I think it's great advice, and also she's wonderful and you should watch all of her videos because she's wonderful and they're all wonderful. But I definitely am planning on taking my drill book and doing that advice during next week. I'm also going to go online and try to find more reading passages to do that with so I can keep doing this every single day next week before the test, and when I find them, I will put the links to them down in the doobly-doo along with all the other resources that I've been mentioning. So in addition, it also never hurts to be reading actual books. One, just for, pleasure and learning things, and also just to give you some more practice with Japanese that you'd see outside of a test context. I'm currently working on the novelization of Tenki no Ko, or Weathering with You, which is a wonderful film from Makoto Shinkai. A lot of you probably know about it. When I watched the film while I was in Japan last summer, I was actually surprised at how easy I was able to understand it and keep up with it. So I figured going through the book would probably be similarly easy and just good reading practice. The book is obviously a little bit more difficult than the movie, just because the movie is all conversation, whereas this is written in novel format. But again, it's very, very useful to get the practice of reading through here. I can go through and try to time myself on a page and see if I can do it within a certain time limit, but I'm also using it as a test to see if I'm able to figure out what words mean through context. Because yes, there's plenty of times on the practice tests where I come across a word I don't know, but I don't really have an option. I don't get to use a dictionary. So this is good practice for just working on things through context clues. All right, lastly, of course, you've got the listening section, and very similar to reading, the Somatome book just sort of goes through and you get daily practice. These are all pretty good practice. I don't feel that they're any easier or any more difficult than what I've seen on practice tests. If you're more worried about the listening, I might recommend the Shinkansen Master Series to get better explanations about what's going on here, and also more challenging passages so that you really feel like you're ready for the test. Because similar to the reading section, they tend to try to ask you things that will throw you off for a loop, or you'll have 4 answer choices and the listening thing will mention all 4 of those answer choices, but of course only one of them is correct. So it's, getting that practice trying to suss out which one is the right one. So again, this book, Shinkansen Master, drill books, practice tests, online practice, anything really will get you there so long as you're practicing the questions. Another thing that's really good for listening is a service called Japan Net TV, and I've been using this for a number of years. They offer a couple different programs to do it, and they're all pretty much the same. What it is it's a service that lets you watch live TV from Japan. It also acts as a DVR, so you can watch the last 2 weeks of Japanese TV on demand. And of course, their website is going to be down in the doobly-doo. Speaking of drill books, I do have one of those. This is the Master in a Short Time, the Nihongo no Yokushiken N3. So this is just a solid book that covers all the sections of the test and has practice questions for each type. At the very end, it has a short test. It's obviously not the length of a real JLPT, but it's just one more measure of practice test that you can time and put yourself through to get yourself used to that time constraint. My plan is I've done a couple of these already, but I'm mainly saving this for next week, so that next week I'm just going to be doing drills. I'm going to fish that Somatome grammar book out of the trash and do the questions from it for practice. I'm going to keep reviewing my Anki flashcards that I have, but essentially next week I'm not going to be learning anything new. I'm just going to be practicing questions and reviewing what I've already got. Alright, so as far as where I got any of these, the first location I'll mention is the one I use in Japan. I've forgotten the name of it right now, and I'm going to have to look it up later and put it in the doobly-doo. But essentially it's a bookstore in Tokyo that specializes only in Japanese language learning textbooks. And as far as I know, it's the only bookstore that really specializes in just that. Their prices are also really, really fair. They just charge you whatever the list price on the book is. So there's no markup, there's no nothing. It's probably the best price you're gonna get. But of course, sadly, that option is only available if you're in Japan. So if you live here in the United States, you've got a Kinokuniya near you, they tend to sell the JLPT books, and also Amazon. Amazon is sort of hit or miss depending on the price. You can sometimes find a different seller who's willing to sell it for cheap. Kinokuniya will give you the benefit of actually being able to look at the book and decide if you want it before you buy it, similar to what I did with the bookstore in Japan. However, the price is going to be the worst. So if you see here, you can see the list price of the book is 1,600 yen, or about $16. But here at Kinokuniya, it's $25 for the book. So $9 more for that import tax and Kinokuniya markup. The last option I'm going to recommend for buying the books online would be a website called honto.jp. So this is an online Japanese bookseller, and they sell both digital books and physical books. They also ship to America, and if you choose C-mail shipping, you're actually going to get a pretty good price. Alright, so that does it for my video. For everyone who's planning on taking the JLPT in a week and a half, good luck. If you're taking it in Houston, I will see you there. And for everyone planning on taking it in the future, I really hope that some of these resources and this advice has helped you in the same way that it helps me. See you later!